This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with my review of Who Killed WCW Part 4. By far the most boring episode. By far. I actually had to watch this episode. Okay, right now it's 3:11 a.m. Thursday morning. I was up about 9:30 this morning, or I guess you could say Wednesday morning, and I started watching that show when I got up. And at various points, my mind wandered and I got distracted with other stuff and missed sections of it because it was so boring. It's easier for your mind to wander or for you to get distracted. And then other points, it's just like, okay, I got to pause this. I'll come back to it later because it's just, first of all, it's like, is this whole series designed just to put Eric Bischoff over? I know Conrad Thompson is involved with the Vice people, and he's also involved with Eric Bischoff's podcast. And like, obviously, if you're gonna have a whole, I'm not dissing Conrad. I'm just saying, like, Vice certainly has people that they protect and people that they don't protect. Eric Bischoff seems to be one of their protected people, and it seems like this whole series is just to put him over and help him in his other projects. I like him, but this was just it's too much. This a four-part series about Eric Bischoff, basically. I don't know, guys. Have I told you this was boring? A lot of this had to do with one thing I will say that they got across fairly well in this is that it was very bizarre that WCW was ultimately sold to WWE for a bargain basement price when at one point Eric was trying to buy it for much more money and there was a TV deal involved and so forth. Who would they have still sold WCW had it been making money? No. Even when I interviewed Dave Meltzer, he agreed with me on that. They wouldn't have closed WCW if it had been profitable. It had lost too much money for too long. Maybe the executives who come off as complete dicks in this for the most part, other than Ted Turner's son. Maybe they didn't put enough effort into it, but like the whole thing is, if the company had been running like it was in the couple years it was beating WWE the whole time, they wouldn't have closed it. The problem was it was bleeding money and it wasn't getting any better. It was only getting worse. And other thing they got across in this, which I agree with, is like they weren't working as a team. They weren't working as a troupe. There was too many egos. I mean, honestly, Kevin Nash, as much as I love him, he was one of those egos, beating Goldberg and the whole finger poke of doom crap. And no, it was not time for Goldberg to be beaten. And I love Kevin Nash. One of my favorite matches was wrestling Kevin Nash, and I was a big fan of his. And he was a draw. We drew over 3,000 to the show where I wrestled him long after WCW. It's too bad WCW closed, particularly for people like me who literally got into wrestling the same year WCW closed. Because when WCW closed, ECW, I think, closed a little bit before WCW or a little bit after. I forget. It's 3 in the morning. And I've had a lot of concussions, but it's like at the time I was getting into wrestling, there was just so many good wrestlers that didn't have jobs. And there was only one place to work that actually paid good money. Now there's WWE paying money, AEW, ATM Tony is way, way, way more giving than ATM Eric ever was. Tony Khan makes Eric Bischoff look like a penny pincher, and that's shoot. Now and then there's still Impact around. even though they pay very little from what I understand, but some people make enough to make a living between that and indie bookings. NWA, some people between that and indie bookings are doing all right, even though it's not that relevant. There's New Japan, MLW, which again, I mean, it's not that much money, but there's just a lot of options for wrestling these days. Not that Japan is flourishing now, as I was talking in my interview with Rene Dupree earlier today. Well, there's another good example. He had a good run in WWE, multiple time tag team champions, feuded with John Cena. Had a really good run, had a good physique. He's about 6'2" ish, bodybuilder physique. When his WWE run ended, there was nowhere else to go. Really wasn't for him, other than the indies. In today's marketplace, he would have gone to AEW, or WWE would have kept him on longer and given him more chances, and he would have ultimately been a bigger star. So there's lots of people that probably would have became stars had there been two big companies still that never got the chance just because there was such fewer jobs. They don't really go into this enough about how bad WWE blew it with the WCW invasion. They talk about it some, but it was really bad how badly they blew the invasion. It did pop interest in WWE for a while in the few years after WCW was bought, but then the wrestling business really started to decline for a while. But anyways, I'm glad this series is over. The one thing I'll say, I was able to watch it. It was tough to watch this one. It's like this subject, it could have been done in a lot fewer episodes and it could have been less biased, I think. But I made it through. I don't think I could sit through a 3-hour Raw, but I would put it up there with the Dark Side of the Ring North Korea, which I didn't like. Not as bad as the Dark Side of the Ring about the guy that ultimately became a gay porn star and was a drug addict. That was the worst Dark Side of the Ring ever. But I would put this up as one of the worst episodes Vice has put out about wrestling as far as entertainment value. And yeah, I mean, if WCW had worked more than a team and had stronger leadership and more go-getters, I think it could have been around longer and profitable longer. But as The Rock said when it closed down, it had had its run. It had had its run, and it was time to close up. But I really did not like personally. I was a WCW fan. I did not like the last few years of WCW. It actually depresses me from the Jeff Jarrett title reign to the David Arquette crap, to the Vince Russo crap, which was crap, to the Kevin Sullivan later booking years crap of letting Chris Benoit win his championship. It just makes me sick how bad that company was ruined. Because people can say all they want about those 91 years, 90, 92, 93. As a kid, I liked it. I liked it when Hogan came. I liked the Dungeon of Doom stuff because I was a kid. And then the NWO stuff was cool and all that. Then it just got horrible in the last few years. So at least it was out of its misery, which is partly why I was happy now that WWE seems to be having a lot more pull in TNA. And because that product was getting so bad, it needs to be put out of its misery too, with like the Tessa Blanchards becoming men's champions, etc. It reminded me a lot under the D'Amore administration of how bad WCW got towards the end. Anyways, tell me what you thought about the series in the comments. Always nice seeing The Rock, but he's got a each episode. I think actually the Vince Russo episode which was episode number 3, did a better rating than episode number 2, so Vince Russo did pop a rating. I'll be surprised if this one gets much of a rating. Honestly, it was freaking boring. Hate to say this. Because a lot of it is about Eric Bischoff talking about all this stuff that he was going to do but didn't do. So why the freak should we care? Because he never did it. Let's talk about all this stuff I've wanted to do in my life and didn't do. Anyone can talk about stuff that's never been done. It's just hypothetical. Anyways, Bischoff had control of it various times, like towards the end too, where he had input, and I didn't see it getting much better. And I'm not saying that he's not a smart guy and didn't have great accomplishments, or I wouldn't want him as an advisor if I ever had a well-funded company. Not that that would ever happen, but I am putting on a show this Saturday night in Napanee, Ontario. I hope to see many of you there, and we are going to be streaming it live here on the Hannibal TV